Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our Evolve 365 Microsoft Tips and Tricks session today. We wanted to start this weekly series to give simple and easy tips that anyone can go back to their desk and quickly implement. We know your time is valuable, so we strive to keep sessions to no more than 30 minutes, sometimes less. We also push the topics out monthly, so you only have to sign up once for the monthly series instead of 4 or 5 times. If you ever miss a session, you can always find the recordings on our Planet Technologies YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Planet Technologies. A little about myself. I'm your host, Tanya Kaiser. I have more than 15 years experience with project management across multiple industries, including technology, legal, nonprofit, and construction. I'm also a longtime Microsoft geek and a big SharePoint nerd. One of the things I enjoy the most is helping others learn new skills, whether it be with applications they're familiar with, like Word or Excel, or something completely new to them, like SharePoint. If you ever have any questions after a session, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or send me an email. So a little about Planet Technologies. Planet has been providing expert support in the Microsoft world for over 18 years. We offer full services for the entire Microsoft Cloud and Productivity Suite, including advisory, deployment, and training services, mobile application development and solutions, and strategic business consulting, including technology, compliance, and security guidance. So now that we have the intros out of the way, let's go ahead and kick things off. This week we're going to take a look at modern lists in SharePoint and some of the other updates that we've seen come out. Now, we first covered modern libraries back in July if you're interested in viewing that session, and it'll be listed on our YouTube channel under a Future of SharePoint update. So when we're looking at the modern lists, like I mentioned, these were announced way back in May when Microsoft held its May 4th Future of SharePoint event, and they really put an emphasis on the modern experience that was going to be coming to SharePoint. That included things like the modern libraries, which rolled out first, seeing the sites tile actually say SharePoint, which rolled out shortly after the May 4th event. Now we've seen modern libraries hit, modern lists, and then they announced at the end of August that we're going to have modern team sites coming down the line as well. So for the modern list, these were rolled out to first release users in August, but then we saw the production announcement hit the Office 365 Admin Center earlier this month on September 2nd. So if you haven't seen any of these modern lists, or maybe you're not aware if they're on their tenant, you're going to get a look at this in this section. Now, part of the move to the uniform SharePoint experience across platforms is this modern experience. They're working on this user interface change. You have a command bar instead of the ribbon. They want it to be easier to use for their users, so you can do a lot of the inline creation for views and adding columns and even editing directly on the page without having to go back and forth to the ribbon. And they also want to automate some simple processes with versions, approvals, and alerts. This is integrating other components of Office 365 like Microsoft Flow and Power Apps directly within SharePoint. And as I mentioned, they want that uniform experience across all platforms. So all of these modern experiences, whether it be a library, a list, or a team site, work with the SharePoint mobile app. Now, one thing I always have to caution people about, modern experience is the default. So whether you're creating a brand new library or a brand new list like we're looking at today, that modern experience is going to be your default. Now, they do let you know that if you have some unsupported customizations, it's automatically going to redirect you back to the classic experience. So unsupported means that you have, some images worked in there, or maybe a particular workflow, or maybe some particular code query strings. Those are going to default right away back to the classic experience. So again, even if you have modern lists on your tenant, but you're not seeing it, it may be because you have one of those unsupported lists. So you're only going to see the classic experience. Now, one of the choices that people can make is they may want to default to only the classic experience. You can do that at multiple levels, so you can do it directly on the list. If you have permissions to the settings on the list, you can make sure that list always shows in classic. You can do it at a site collection level. You can go to each individual app and change that over to classic. And then if you want to make a call for your whole tenant, this would require admin access, but your Office 365 and SharePoint admins can make that setting at the whole tenant level that no one will ever see classic. So they're just some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to show you the modern list, some of the keys that you can find in the command bar, and then some of the things that you need to watch out for as well. So I'm just going to switch over to my browser, and you'll see pretty quickly, if you haven't seen any of this information, it's going to be completely brand new. If you have noticed that you've got this, some of it's going to be familiar, but I just added a brand new list to my site.
And since I'm adding a brand new list, it's letting me know, hey, lists have a brand new look. You know, we've made it faster and easier to use. You can click through the menu. It's just giving you some tips. You can edit items quickly. Previously, if we wanted to do a quick edit, we would have to go back to the ribbon, select that button, then come back. Now you can do this all within the same page without ever leaving. So that's why they want to push it out. Just easier for end users to use. We talked about flow. They're letting you know you can automate tasks with flow, take additional actions, set your rules, and let it all do the work for you. Now, this isn't a one-to-one InfoPath replacement if you're familiar with InfoPath. InfoPath is still very much being used, but again, this is just integrating into that modern experience some of these quicker actions. So you can build a custom app with Power Apps. Again, this is very similar to the flow component that's being worked in there, no coding required. So they're just trying to bring a lot of this to the page where the users are. And again, reminding you that you can create a view and save it from the same page. No need to go into the ribbon and build it. So once you're past that opening message, you then come to your new list. Now you can see it's got a very much a different look and feel from a classic list. We don't have that ribbon up above. So if you're seeing this for the first time and you've worked for SharePoint with a really long time, you may be a little confused, you know, where's my ribbon? Do I not have the permissions? And that's not why I'm not seeing the ribbon, because I'm in view only mode. And they replaced the ribbon with the command bar. So you can see we've got a new button to add a brand new item. We've got quick edit where we can do a quick edit of all the items that we have. We have export to Excel, so if we had any data in our list. And I will tell you that when Modern Lists first rolled out to preview and first released customers in August, export to Excel was not there. And that was something that the community really jumped on right away, saying, hey, we have to have that export to Excel button. It's a must-have. So you can see that they very much are taking feedback. We've got the flow information. You can create a flow and see your flows if you already had any. And then we have Power Apps where you can come in and create a Power App. And of course, we've got our ellipsis, which always leads to another menu. In this case, it's just saying alert. So this is our new command bar that's replacing a lot of the most common functions that we would find on our ribbon. Now we still have a few other pieces over here. We've got all items. You can see this is where we can save a view. If we had come in and started adding new columns or filtering, we could save it. We can manage our views. We've got our info bar. If we had an item selected, it would show us information about that specific item. So you may be wondering where all the other menus, where did they go? One of the new changes with the modern experience is that they're now up above under the settings gear. So you can see in the settings gear, I can still get to my list settings, that classic menu that I'm used to seeing. So it hasn't gone away. They've just changed the interface quite a bit where we see the most needed actions in the command bar. Now, one thing that I'll point out in the lower left-hand corner, you know, you're always going to have that option to go back to classic SharePoint. Now, if you wanted to set this list to be on classic SharePoint permanently, you'd want to go into the list settings and make that change. But if you just want to see what it would look like in classic SharePoint, you just click that link. Now, the one thing that I've heard some people complain about is there's no easy way to flip back and forth between classic and modern. If I click this link and go back to classic, I'm stuck on classic unless I close out my browser and reopen it. That's not as smooth as some people would like, but that's what we have right now. Now, the other thing that I can tell you, and I'm going to go into a different SharePoint site really quickly, is a lot of times because people have pre-existing lists and they have some customizations, so they never see what that new modern SharePoint is going to look like. There is a way to try it out and kind of forcing it. So I'm just going to go into my site contents for one of my SharePoint sites that I have multiple lists on. And you can see I've got a lot of different lists here, but this is taking me back to that classic view, and the reason is we have a lot of customizations in here. So I'm just going to pick one of my lists, and we'll see if there's a way that we can force our lists to go into that classic view. So we've got a status list here with a couple of items. And if you're ever wondering, you know, how you can try things out, there's usually a query command that you can add to the end of the URL. So what I have here is one of the original Microsoft Tech community posts about rolling out modern SharePoint lists. This actually was linked from the Office 365 Admin Center where they made the announcement that this is a new feature. And they almost always provide you a link to learn more information. So you can read through this. You can see how they're explaining the modern lists, you know, the information panel, you know, how you would create a new Power App, how you would add a new flow. But if you'll notice down here, you know, early preview, they give you a query command that you can add to the end of a URL. So depending on what my URL ends with, if there's string parameters, I can just add this in here and try and force that modern experience. So you can see that it's just adding this to the end of your URL, and then depending on how your URL ends, you may need to either add an ampersand or a question mark. So if I go back to my list that I was looking at and go to the very end, and we just really just want to add that on there. Now again, it's going to want to default those lists that have customizations back to the classic experience. So you can see for this one, it's not working because I have those Kanban charts in there. But that's one way that you maybe can try out the modern list experience. I'll show these queries again if you don't have that on your tenant right now and you're just kind of curious, how is it going to affect your list that you have right now? Because some people do put a lot of customizations into those lists. So again, it's just adding that query to the end of your URL, and if you don't have the modern list right now, that's one way you can try it out. But going back to our list, if I wanted to come in, we've got our title bar, but I wanted to quickly add some items in here, I just click that plus sign and I can say I want to go ahead and add a date, and it lets me give it a name, and I can just continue on adding information. Maybe I want to add, you know, a single line of text for a description. So they're really moving towards you can do all of this on the same page without having to go back and forth to the settings ribbon. Maybe I want to add a number. Let's just say it's an account number. And maybe I want to add one more field, and we'll make it a person field, and we'll just say that this is, you know, a project manager, and maybe our title is the project. So just like that, I've quickly added in some fields, and if I wanted to come in here and I didn't want to add one item at a time by clicking the new button, and it's going to give me my form, I can always click cancel, and if I go back to my modern list, well, now I'm in the classic mode because I must have switched browsers, but let me open up a brand new browser. And this is what I was talking about. There's no easy way to switch from classic and modern. But what I can do is I can open up a brand new browser session and switch right back into my classic mode. So we'll just paste in that link there, and we'll go into another browser session. So I've got my columns in here. If I didn't want to add them one by one, I can come in and do quick edit, and then I can just go in and type things here really, really easily. And I can just come in and say type a demo project, give items a date, and just populate my info a lot easier than I have in the past. We'll just fill in some blank information, and I can keep going down the line and then just populate information like that. So it's really a lot easier to create your custom list. You're not working with, you know, going back and forth between the ribbon and then, oh, I forgot to add this, maybe I need to reorder it. And you'll see very shortly that it's also easier to create brand new views as well. So I can just click the Done button. Oh, and it's telling me that I need to fix some items, so it didn't take my edits. And you can see how this is a little bit tricky, so I'll type that in because I clicked too fast. Now, we haven't done a tips and tricks session yet on the Microsoft Flow and Power Apps, but we are looking on doing that for our November session since we've already got our October sessions kind of set. And then we're also going to do an update on all of the other announcements that have come out of Microsoft Ignite. We'll cover that in just a little bit at the end of our session today. I'm just going to fill in one of these and let's see if it gives me another error. So I should be able to click Done. And it's giving me a pop-up. It may be because I'm actually in Internet Explorer. So this time it saved my info. I've got just a few lines there. But again, if I wanted to come in and filter these by any number of items, I can come in and do that. If I wanted to say, let's sort it by, you know, account number, if we had multiple lines, I can do that. And then the great thing about doing that is I can then come in, once I've filtered those items, However I have my data displayed on the page, I can save that view directly on this page, and I'm done. I haven't had to go into the settings menu. I haven't had to make any of those changes at all. So it's one of those ways that they're just trying to make it easier for users to put in that information. Now the other thing that I can show you really quickly is the thing that they say about modern experience. So we've already seen modern libraries. We're now seeing modern lists. And they announced right at the end of August that modern team sites are also coming, is that it works really, really well on mobile applications. So I'm going to switch over to the mobile app very briefly. Let's see, I did have that up, so we'll just make sure that it's still displaying. And we should see it pop up in just a little bit. There we go. So this is, again, you've seen some of this before. This is the SharePoint app, and I'm actually in the demo SharePoint site that we were just looking at. And if I click on my modern list, you can see that it changes the format of the item that I listed. I've got that basic info, the basic description, and then I can still come and open it up and see more information, who it was created by, who was it modified by. So it works very, very well in the mobile applications. In a couple of weeks, if you attend our session on Android applications in October, you'll see this on the Android SharePoint app that they just announced. Now, in comparison, if I go back to a classic list where I've got one of those as well, you can see there's not a lot of items in here, but it just doesn't work that great when we have a classic list. These are pretty basic, but the view format is not going to be the same. It's going to try and force any classic list into that modern look. So depending on what kind of columns we have, we may or may not get all of the information that we need. But you can see this is a pretty seamless experience. I've got a slightly different layout, but it's presented very, very well on the mobile application. Now if I wanted to come in here and modify any of this, I can just click the edit button, and it lets me know that this hasn't been fully integrated because, again, the modern lists are just rolling out. I mentioned that when they pushed them out to first release customers in August, they didn't have the export to Excel button. So they're still adding features to it, and there's still going to be some components that you're only going to get back in the classic mode. So that's a quick peek at the SharePoint mobile app using the modern list and the classic list. But again, if you want your users to come in and be able to consume that information, it works really, really well with the mobile application. So I'm going to switch back to our presentation really quickly. You saw how I could create an item really quickly. I can come in, I can edit just on the page. If I wanted to create a workflow around this list, I can do that. If I wanted to, create my own view, and if I had a lot more data to populate, we can easily do that as well. If I wanted to set an alert, it's on there. And again, those are the most common actions that users are taking. Now, remember, those settings menus have not gone away. They're just under your gear. And if you open it up, it's going to look just like you remembered, your regular settings menu where you can come in. You can still create a view from here if you wanted. You can still add columns. So if you're just not comfortable with that modern experience, you still have the classic settings menu. I'm going to show you the one area. It's under settings and under advanced settings, where if you did want to default to only the classic for this list, you would essentially scroll all the way to the bottom, and then you can see there's a choice now for list experience. Default, set by your admin, so that means your admin sets it for your whole environment, or for the list specifically, new or classic. So if I was creating a new list and I knew that it had components that were not going to work with modern, that may be something you want to come in and change. Again, of course, users can always default to classic by using this lower left-hand link here, but then as you saw in my previous browser, once I switch back to it, you have to close out the browser to get back into modern experience. So I'm going to go back to my presentation, and let's talk about some things that we want to make sure we consider with modern lists. So it does support any themes, navigation, and custom buttons that you may have. Microsoft has said that those are incorporated into it. One thing that I will tell you is if you have custom branding, it may break your custom branding. This all depends on what components your branding is using within SharePoint. Specifically, JS link customizations will not work with Modern List, that's one thing that was mentioned. And then some browsers are still seeing issues. So I mentioned Chrome specifically because when it was rolled out to preview and first release customers in August, it wasn't working in Chrome at all. But as you can see, they've already made some adjustments. They have the export to Excel button added in. They have Flow added in now, which was in preview and Power App and stuff. So you may be fine in Chrome, but it's something to be aware of. If you're looking at this for your users and you want to be on top of it, do your due diligence when you're testing and check every browser and make sure you're not going to run into any issues. This is for custom lists only right now. So if you're using any of the pre-formatted lists like announcements or task lists, those aren't on Modern. They're going to stick with the same classic view that you're used to. Now, of course, you saw that it integrates with Flow and Power Apps. The reason for that is they want it to be easier for users to create workflows and to create these apps on the go. If you've never heard of Flow and Power Apps and you're wondering, is this something that my users should be using? We didn't let any of them use InfoPath or SharePoint Designer. You can find more information. Pretty much if you do a Google search for Microsoft's mobile and intelligent intranet video, I put the link here, but I know it's hard to jot down a link when you're watching. You can find that YouTube video, and about the 7-minute mark, they start talking about the modern lists and libraries. And again, the thing to remember is you're not going to be forced to use Modern Experience. Microsoft has stated and affirmed multiple times, both at the May 4th event and a lot of their other announcements, whether it was the Modern Libraries in July or Modern Lists, in late August, September, even Modern Team Sites, when they announced that, they've said Classic is still going to be here for a while. We're not going to be able to remove it because they know it's so widely used. So it's just one of those things to be watching out for. Now, that's a quick look at Modern Lists. We didn't look at a list that had a lot of content in there, but I wanted you to see the general layout. It's going to be very similar to Modern Libraries, and you can take a look at our Modern Library video back from July. Now, some of the other updates that we're seeing around SharePoint and Office 365. There was an announcement that was pushed through the Admin Center right at the end of August saying Modern Team Sites are on the way, but they really haven't given out a lot of information on that. They indicated that every Office 365 group is going to get a home page, but we don't know, which way is that going. Does that mean every SharePoint site has a group or every group has a SharePoint site? I'm sure there's going to be more announcements at this as Ignite. And if you're not familiar with what Ignite is, Microsoft Ignite is their annual conference for all of their Microsoft products. So a few years ago, they would have a SharePoint conference and then a developer conference and then, an Azure conference and all of their products, an Office conference. Now it's one giant conference called Ignite. They started last year in Chicago, and this year they're in Atlanta. And they're only into the first 2-3 days. This technically started on Sunday, but it runs Monday through Friday. And there's already been a flurry of announcements. One of the things that I'm excited about is they did say that there's a SharePoint mobile app available now for Android. I've already downloaded that onto my Android tablet, and we're going to be looking at all the Android applications in October in one of our sessions and see what's the difference between, iOS apps and Android apps, because they have said it's cloud first, mobile first, but they're pushing everything to iOS first. So I'm happy to see that SharePoint app land on Android finally. One of the other things that I noticed is they're going to have a new, rebranded app launcher for Office 365. So if you're used to signing into Office 365 and going to that upper right-hand corner and clicking the waffle or the little squares, it's going to look slightly different. It's going to have more of a feel like Windows 10. So they did mention that in one of their sessions. That's going to be, a subtle change, but something that users will definitely notice since that's primarily how they get to their apps in Office 365. They also announced that you can bring a modern home page to a classic team site. So again, one of those areas where what does that exactly mean? Give us some more info. And then they announced changes on groups as well, group files experience. So a lot of organizations are, struggling with, do we go with groups, do we go with SharePoint? But it looks like they're getting integrated more and more. So for group files, you can see all of your files, including email attachments, in one place. So that sounds like that would be something that's really exciting for a lot of users. They no longer have to go from place to place to get all of that information. Ignite is a massive conference. I was lucky enough to attend last year, but the great thing about it is that you can watch online all of their sessions. So Some of the keynotes they stream live, but then they always put the recordings on within a day or so. So if you're interested in checking out any of that, and believe me, they have much more than SharePoint and Office 365. They've got things on Azure, on Exchange, the whole 9 yards. You can find that at ignite.microsoft.com, and I'm sure in one of our sessions we'll do some recaps as we know more about the announcements that they're launching. So some of the changes that I mentioned, like modern lists today, are one of those things that people struggle with. You know, there's constant ongoing changes in Office 365, and IT teams struggle with sometimes keeping their employees informed. You know, yes, this is a change. It's just a branding change. It's just a look, no function change. Or in the case of the modern experience, yes, the way things work and the way they function actually did change. So one of our products at Planet is called Evolve 365. Now this is our subscription-based help desk as a service for Microsoft Office 365, and it's designed solely to increase your end user adoption and help evolve your organization to be more productive. So instead of your IT team constantly struggling to keep up with all of these changes in Office 365, Office, and SharePoint, we help you with that. We have more than 27,000 on-demand self-help videos that are available to your users. They can go in and search for a specific item that they're trying to figure out how to do, or they can go in and do guided training, and we keep our content up to date so you don't have to create brand new training content. People can learn at their own pace. You can also, assign them a skill track that they need to watch as well when you're looking at a massive change in Office 365 or Office. Every subscription comes with a dedicated Office 365 trusted advisor like myself, but we also have additional add-ons such as live phone support and vision and planning sessions. If this is something that sounds like it would be interesting to you, knowing that these changes are coming down the line with Office 365, you can check out our free trial site. So our free trial site has a sample of some of the 27,000 videos that we have. You'll have about 200 or so videos. You can get an idea of the look and feel and how our videos run. They're normally 30 seconds to a minute long. We have a few that are a few minutes long, but the majority of them are very short. We want our users to go in and get the answer that they need and get the help that they need right away. And things like this changing at Microsoft Ignite with, the app launcher changing. As soon as we know that that's starting to hit production, we update our content and it goes updated very, very quickly so our customers don't have to worry about their content being out of date. If you're interested in learning more about the free trial, you can sign up for the free trial at freetrial.o365support.com. If you want to learn more about the product itself, you can visit our website at o365support.com or always send us an email at info@o365support.com. Now we are closing up our September series today, looking at the modern lists within SharePoint. We've already launched our October series invite. That may be in your inbox. If not, you can always sign up by going to go-planet.com/events and find the listing. And in October, we're going to be taking a look at some business email basics, covering the Android applications that are available for Microsoft, and then we're going to look at some advanced Word formatting like table of contents and section breaks. Again, you can always find all of our recordings on our Planet Technologies YouTube channel, as well as some of our other webcasts, like a Windows 10 deployment and Power BI sessions. If you're a government or military employee, we're having our first annual Office 365 Summit for Government on October 6th in Washington, D.C. You can find more information about that at o365summit.com. So we're coming up right at time today. Again, I hope everyone has learned a little bit more about the modern lists and libraries as they're pushing out that modern experience on SharePoint. Next week we'll kick off October by talking about email basics. But if you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or send me an email. Thanks again for your time today, everyone, and I hope to see you next week.